My wife and I are very similar in very few ways. We're different in almost every way, which makes great for complementing one another. But there's one way we are very similar, and I don't know if you and your spouse are this way. We are both committed to being passive aggressive. And I gotta say, I'm probably the champion right now because she was a master. She was strong and early in the marriage that she would make the comments that I just missed them until later. But I'll give you the perfect example of why I think I'm the champion. She would be mad about something or upset, and I would ask her the question every husband has asked every wife for thousands of years: what's wrong? And she would answer the same way every wife has answered every husband for thousands of years: nothing. And it drove me crazy that she would not just talk about it, and we'd go through this minutia of, well, I know something's wrong, and they go back and forth and do that. So I've decided I was going to turn up the passive aggression. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, nothing. And I said, well, I can tell something's wrong, and I would love to help with it. But unless you're willing to tell me, I have to trust you. I have to trust that when you say nothing is wrong, nothing is wrong. So I'm going to treat you as if nothing is wrong. And that just ticked her off. And she finally started opening up when I'd say, what's wrong? And she'd say nothing. I'm like, okay. And we'd go on our way. And it made her mad to where finally we started dealing with issues directly. And that was my whole motive to begin with. And that's really our tool this week, because couples, a lot of times we can take that nothing's wrong and we can let it stir and let it stammer and let it brew over time. And then in a lot of marriages, we will just let it keep going and we never deal with it. And then we just start sweeping it under the rug. And that's the tool this week, is a broom. And the tool is simply this: sweep it up, don't sweep it under. And the key there, and what I've discovered is an amazing reality, that if there's a major issue, there's going to be little pieces that we let go for a little while and we come back and revisit. But I'm talking about the big issues in a marriage, the big items that frustrate, and that's going to be different for everybody. But I'll give you a perfect example of what I mean by the whole sweep it up, don't sweep it under. When we were first married, we were told you need to decide who's going to handle the checkbook. And I'm like, okay. And a little bit out of pride, I'm like, so do you want to balance the checkbook or do you want me to balance the checkbook? Because I balance my checkbook to the penny every month. And so I asked her, I said, how often do you balance your checkbook? And she goes, oh, I do it once a week. Once a week? I thought, that's impressive. I said, where do you get the statement once a week to reconcile your checkbook? She said, what does that word mean? And I was like, okay, what do you mean when you say you're balancing your checkbook? She goes, well, I just write out all the checks and all the ATMs, and at the end of the week, I subtract them out and I get the balance. And I'm like, okay, but what do you reconcile that with? And she goes, there's that word again. What do you mean reconcile? And I'm like, well, there's the balance you say you have and the one the bank says you have. And she said, oh, I just look at the ATM slip. It gives me a balance. And I said, what about the outstanding checks? And I'm not making this up. She said, you mean the big ones? And I'm like, no, the ones that haven't cleared the bank, that haven't cashed yet. And I'm not exaggerating. She said, it's not my fault they can't cash them fast enough. And I thought, okay, I'll handle the checkbook, which I did. The problem is her system and my system clashed. I would get the statement at the end of the month. She wouldn't enter checks. She wouldn't enter ATMs. And it was a nightmare balancing our checkbook. It got so bad and we swept it under the rug so much that when she saw I was sitting down to do the statement, she would run upstairs, lock the door, and watch a program while I dealt with this. Well, after a while, that just grated on me. I'm like, I'm sick of being responsible for this. And she's not doing any of this. So I had a plan, my passive-aggressive plan. I'll move some funds from savings into checking. And I'll have a buffer, and that'll work, and that'll keep us okay. The problem with that is I don't know if you remember this, she gets her balance from the ATM machine. She got the balance and went, money! And she blew through the buffer in no time. Well, I got a letter from the bank that said, just because you have checks doesn't mean you have money. And now we had to deal with this. And we went from sweeping this under for months to sweeping it up. And I said, you know what? We are going to balance our checkbook. We're going to sit down at the table. We're going to go down through every entry, the ones we missed, the ones we didn't, and we are not going to get up until our checkbook is balanced. Can I tell you, that hour each month was the most miserable hour of our month. I hated that hour. The only person that hated it more than me was her. We hated that hour. But here's what happened. When we were done, it was done. It was over. Because here's what happens when we sweep it under the rug. There's this feeling like we're getting away with it, and there's a moment of pleasure that, I avoided that conflict. But then there's an ongoing tension that's just there. And then little pieces completely unrelated make us blow up over issues that aren't even issues. But here's what I found. When we sweep it up, deal with it that hour, hit it head on, there is momentary pain. But then there is harmony and peace and connectedness that's ongoing. So you and I have a simple decision to make. If I sweep it under, we're going to have that momentary joy and not have to deal with it. It's no conflict, but it's a lie because there's an ongoing conflict that's underneath everything. Or we sweep it up and there's momentary pain, but then there's ongoing harmony and connection, which we all want. So some great questions you're about to answer. Talk about that, enjoy that, and I'll see you next time.